Morning people, welcome back to F Politics. This is why I love whenever Nigel Farage visits the bankers in the City of London. Because it's that old phrase, you can fool some of the people all the time, all the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And whenever Nigel Farage visits the bankers and the rich people, you can see what he really feels and who he's really in politics to protect. His whole thing of, I'm in it to protect working class people against the elites, just disappears.
And this hard left socialist dogma that it's popular to tax the rich, that the rich won't move, they'll stay and pay more. That, I'm afraid, has infected virtually the entirety of our political class, and it's wrong.
Now, the vast majority of the UK supports taxing the rich more. They also support a wealth tax. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage is pushing the narrative that if you tax the rich, they'll all leave and you'll have nobody left to tax and you won't be able to afford public services. But according to the London School of Economics, that's just not happening, partly because those millionaires know that if they do that, they'll look like dicks. So Nigel Farage is going against the opinion of the vast majority of people in the UK in order to protect the riches of the super wealthy based on a theory that has no evidence behind it. Still think he's a champion of the working class? And you can tell that this whole we have to protect the rich thing is personal for him because he says,
I didn't take the family to Barbados. I didn't buy the kind of cars I'd have liked. I put money aside. That is now subject to inheritance tax.
Only 4% of people in the UK are even rich enough where they would be eligible to start paying any inheritance tax. That's the sort of people that Nigel Farage is weeping for. But here's how you know that his narrative of you can't tax the rich because they'll all leave is bullshit. Because our response has been, yeah, but then we'll make them pay an exit tax. We'll tax all their assets as they try to leave. And this is Nigel Farage's response to that.
People are scared of retrospective taxation and even scared now of the idea of an exit tax.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You don't want to tax the rich because if you tax the rich too much, then they'll all want to leave, according to you. And then we say, okay, but if they want to leave, we can just tax their assets before they leave as an exit tax. You're against that too? It sounds like you just don't want to tax the rich because you're rich.
But perhaps the biggest disaster are young professionals who are caught in the £100,000 a year tax trap.
That's the biggest disaster facing the UK economy right now? People who can only earn £100,000 a year? Really?
And then we have the banking industry. But they, of course, are forced to implement European Union money laundering directives that has led to the debanking of hundreds of thousands of individuals.
I know a lot of you argue that one of the reasons that Nigel Farage wanted Brexit was because the EU was going to pass anti-money laundering legislation, and while I don't buy that as a sole justification, he clearly doesn't like anti-money laundering legislation. And for him to complain about debanking, so where banks get rid of people as their clients, and link that to money laundering, when like a year ago he was complaining about being debanked, are you telling on yourself here, Nigel?
And I will make this absolute promise. We will substantially cut the benefits bill.
Whatever your politics, left, right, socialist, capitalist, whatever, cutting benefits is taking money away from poor people. So you need to have a justification if you're going to do that. Now, what's Nigel's?
There has been a 50% increase in disability claims in Britain over the course of the last 5 years.
Wait, 5 years ago is 2020, when a global pandemic overloaded and crippled our National Health Service, pushing our waiting lists to record levels with millions of people waiting for treatment, and you're shocked that there are now more people who are too sick to work? Especially when one of the reasons that our NHS is so overloaded and why there are so many people who are now waiting for treatment is because Brexit cost us literally thousands of EU nurses and doctors, making Nigel Farage partly responsible for the fact that there are now so many people who are too sick to work, and now he wants to cut the benefits of the people who are too sick to work, during a cost of living crisis which he also made worse via Brexit.
Is the minimum wage too high? Would reform lower it or scrap it to boost aspiration?
There's an argument the minimum wage is too high for younger workers.
Awesome.
We will be the party of small business.
The Small Business Federation has been screaming for half a decade that Brexit has been crippling UK small businesses. The extra red tape and bureaucracy caused by the fact that the UK no longer follows the same rules as the EU has meant that many businesses in the UK have simply stopped operating abroad. So for Nigel Farage to call the Brexit Party the party of small business is frankly laughable.
Will the civil service be smaller? Yes.
Nigel Farage is boasting that if the Reform Party gets into power, they'll cut the size of the civil service. Well, why is the civil service so big right now?
There are more than 7,000 people working on Brexit. There is funding for an extra 9,000 staff to be recruited into the civil service. We are currently recruiting an extra 300 staff in time for our exit, with plans in the pipeline to recruit 1,000 more staff so they're ready to deal with any increase in work.
We are doing worse on debt than any of our competitors, and that includes Eurozone countries.
You're complaining that the government is in debt when your Brexit cost the UK government £40 billion a year in lost tax revenue? Okay.
And just look at the pace, the rapid pace that we continue to deindustrialise. It's all going.
Make UK is the trade association that represents UK manufacturing, and they've been screaming for years that Brexit has been undermining the UK's place in European supply chains. So we are very much in the Nigel Farage complaining about problems that he created section of the video.
That Brexit has been squandered.
This is the argument that if Nigel Farage was in power, Brexit would have been done properly, but the Reform Party's policy for Brexit was no deal Brexit. So unlike with the trade deal that we negotiated, there would be no trade deal at all, so all the economic problems that Brexit created would have been even worse.
The opportunity to sensibly deregulate.
The problems that have been created by Brexit are primarily because the UK's regulations are no longer the same as the EU's regulations, which means there's extra red tape, extra bureaucracy, and that adds cost. That's why things are getting more expensive. So when Nigel Farage talks about deregulating, that means that our rules would be even more different to the EU's rules, so all the damage of Brexit would be even worse.
That regulations and the way regulators behave with British business is now worse than it was at the time of the Brexit referendum vote.
Yes, because before Brexit, the UK had the same regulations as the main place where it did all of its trade. So there was no extra red tape. Everything that was legal in the UK was automatically legal in the EU and vice versa. Now businesses have two sets of regulations to follow. So yes, your Brexit has ruined the UK economy.
Through the financial services industry to the fishing industry.
This is the man who sold Brexit on the basis of it being the saviour of UK fishing, admitting that Brexit Britain is worse for UK fishing. And remember, the damage that Brexit has done to fishing is because the UK is now in a different legal jurisdiction to the EU, and we sold half of our fish to the EU. But if the Reform Party's no-deal Brexit had been in place, that would mean the EU would have had to put tariffs on all the fish we sold to them. So when he moans about the damage that Brexit has done to fishing, just know it would have been even worse under him.
Financial services are Britain's biggest industry. I'm talking about an industry that employs hundreds and thousands of people in every major town and every major city in this country.
Gee, I sure hope Nigel Farage isn't responsible for damaging an industry that is that crucial to the UK economy.
The costs of doing business in London, the costs of doing business in our financial services industry are now simply too high. And we're losing business to places all over the world. New York, the Far East, you name it.
But why is that, Nigel? Because the chief of London's financial sector says that 40,000 jobs have left London because of Brexit. And here's the CEO of Goldman Sachs to really nail that point down.
London continues to be an important financial center, but because of Brexit, because of the way the world's evolving, the talent that was more centered here is more mobile. We as a firm have many more people on the continent in the last 5 years than we did 5 to 10 years ago.
So once again, Nigel Farage creating a problem and then claiming to be the solution. But my favourite part of this whole thing was the fact that Nigel Farage was asked this question.
Can I quickly also ask, do you still support PR? You were a big advocate of it for many years, but have seemed to have gone rather quiet on it now. The first past the post looks like it favours you.
And he completely ignored that question. He didn't answer it at all. He was asked about why he's being silent about the fact that he used to support a fair voting system when he would have benefited from it, and now that he thinks he can win under this voting system, he's not talking about it anymore. And his response to being accused of staying silent on this issue was to stay silent on this issue. You have to question the mind of anybody who still trusts Nigel Farage. I'm Femi. Make sure you follow F Politics so Politics doesn't F you. Have a great week.